in the scope of history. Colby College was founded in 1813. We have the Civil War, Little Women, and then 1871 is the first year we're kind of interested in because women are allowed to enter Colby College for the first time. Mary Lowe enrolls. She's the only woman for 2 years. Then Sigma Kappa is born. Statue of Liberty, nice kind of place to time to keep you in place. And then a big year for us that we're going to talk about is the co-education at Colby College ends. Experiment of men and women taking classes together on an equal basis ended, and that did significantly impact Sigma Kappa in ways I really didn't understand until later. And then finally, our Delta chapter of Sigma Kappa is born. So as you can see, there's a lot of time in between that. So what happened in those decades and where exactly did we go? All right. So we're familiar with these 5 women. So our 5 founders were the only women at Colby College. And a date that's actually really significant for Sigma Kappa in the early days was February 17th. This is our first ever initiation. We didn't, as a national organization, start really celebrating November 9th as our Founders Day until the 1940s or 1950s. This was the day that back in the day was like, this represented Sigma Kappa. This was the anniversary we were very excited about. This was our first ever initiation that was really rushed together because Lizzie was dying. She might not have been known how quickly she was dying, but everyone else did. So they kind of put together this as quickly as they could. Our first ever initiates were the only other women at Colby College. So the only 2 women in the freshman class. I can't find a picture of Ellen. I'm going to, I promise. It's my mission. But on the right is our second initiate ever, who happened to be Lizzie's cousin. So I think that really helped her be excited about Sigma Kappa. And she actually wrote a lot of our initiation songs and contributed heavily to Sigma Kappa, as we'll see later. So really a high point. February 17th, we have 7 women all together at Sigma Kappa, Colby College. Really the high point. We do initiate 3 other members in the fall. But really, Mary graduated before these people were initiated, and Lizzie died. And Ida and Frances have or will leave school, as will Nellie, our first initiate. So I emailed Jordan Bentledge, who's my staff supervisor. I was like, so Sigma Kappa died for a couple of years. We just didn't exist for a couple of years after 1874. So technically we're like 1874 to 1876. And then 1878 on. I'm not quite sure exactly what happened. I just kind of started diving into this. But I discovered in a letter that Louise Coburn wrote to the first ever initiate, saying the girls are reviving Sigma Kappa. I guess the poor thing wasn't so dead that it couldn't be resurrected. So I found this very interesting. So these are 2 women that no one ever talks about or thinks about, but if it weren't for them, we would definitely not all be here together tonight. So thank you to Hattie and Emily. Emily went by Peace, which is her middle name. Her grandmother was Quaker, so that was an homage to her. So I like that little fact. So Sigma Kappa, there's not a lot about this stuff in the early days because one, we kind of didn't exist for a couple of years, but also we were just proving ourselves amongst the Colby College population, amongst the men, and trying to kind of not compete, but show that we were worthy like their fraternities were. This was the first time that Sigma Kappa appeared in the Colby College yearbook, and I have the link at the below. You'll notice like secret symbols that we don't usually have publicly, and you notice that again. The creepy hands, those were Lizzie's idea from back in the day. The stars are the 25 members that were limited. We have our motto on there, One Heart, One Way, which was why we then later developed a secret motto, because we told everyone our motto in the yearbook. So then the members later on developed this secret motto. During this time, only a handful of women are entering Colby College every year. So Sigma Kappa remains really small, really inclusive. They just basically say, oh, you're coming to Colby College and you're a woman, come be a Sigma Kappa. It was a completely inclusive within the context of the time period of letting all women that were coming to Colby College into their sisterhood. So extraordinary, unique amongst our NPC peers. Just a little zoom in of that snake flag, which I find crazy and amazing. So definitely want a pin for that at convention or something, or a sticker. I just thought this was interesting. A picture of a Colby College classroom in 1884. I think the columns there kind of symbolize how much Greek and Roman mythology was around and why kind of fraternal organizations had those names. This is a picture of women in 1885 in a Sigma Kappa meeting, casually hanging out. And another picture, so these were all of the women from the class of 1888, all of them were Sigma Kappas. So up until this, the number of women in Colby never exceeded 20 at a time. So we were a small group of all the women at Colby College supporting each other, giving each other strength, while they weren't really getting a lot of support at all from the university. The university let them in and does the mistake that we do in DEIA, where we think we're doing diversity, but we don't do anything to back it up. We're letting in this diverse population and we're not like providing them the resources they need. So that's why Sigma Kappa came in, because the university was not fulfilling that purpose. So we came in to fulfill those gaps, which I find really inspiring and motivating as our original purpose. Things get a little darker soon, but I think it's really wonderful. This Colby image I love, the snake, the wheel, definitely things that we would not put publicly, like the wheel now, but I love that image. It's like my phone lock screen. And so the Colby class starts getting bigger. More and more women are entering Colby College, and we're like, can Sigma Kappa sustain this kind of membership? And so you can tell we're getting more polished. We're really trying to show the fraternities that we're kind of, good enough. They're going to their national conventions. And I literally read like Deeks, like, we met those Alpha Phi's. They're pretty cool. Hey, Sigma Kappa, like, we need more sororities on our campus. So we'll talk about extension later, but we were getting a lot of pressure from fraternities and how to conduct ourselves and motivation to be the best sorority we could. This is kind of the end of the era. So 1890 is a big year because it's the last year of coeducation. And when the Board of Trustees decide that women and men, while they'll still be admitted on equal basis, will no longer have classes together. They don't want women and men kind of doing assignments together, interacting with each other. They don't want women to see men messing up. They don't want women to be better than them in a public space. So kind of as I mentioned, our first 2 decades were as a non-exclusive sisterhood. So this is really special amongst our NPC peers. They did have a lot in common. They were obviously all white women. They were able to go to college, but some were on scholarships. Not everyone was wealthy. They had different personality types. There were different denominations of Christianity, which isn't a lot today, but back then that was pretty significant in terms of diversity in New England. And Sigma Kappa just grew strong roots around sisterhood and supporting each other before they had to focus on competing against other sororities for recruitment or doing other things like that. So, and then as we did transition to an exclusive sorority more on of what we expect now, those leaders and founders from our early days still guided the chapter. And I think those values really kind of persisted of, we have a close sisterhood and that's what this is really about, rather than all the extra stuff that was really kind of layered on in the 1890s. So 1890, this is the Colby yearbook, kind of saying a farewell to coeducation. This was an homage to the last women that were admitted to be in the classroom with men. Sigma Kappa is mad. 1890, Mary Lowe is pissed. Louise Coburn is so mad. They're writing letters back and forth, and they organize a petition, which basically almost all Sigma Kappa alums, which are basically all the women of Colby College, sign. So the letters are great. You can go online and read the letters between Mary Lowe and Louise, and it really dives into their mentality of like, what was it like to be a woman that was progressive and advocating for women's rights, but in the context of, the 1880s. So, the first 2 signatures are founders. So you can't study the early history of Colby College women without intimately studying Sigma Kappa. We are such a integrated part of their early history, which is why I'm really excited for the 150th and us all to come back there. So I linked the bottom. The whole document is really, really interesting. It's 17 pages, but I find really worth your time. So my favorite letter, Mary Lowe, like, she would roast people. Like, she has fire. Like, she was, so there was one member of Sigma Kappa that wasn't down with the cause, and Mary Lowe was not okay with her. So I'm just gonna, she was saying that this meter piece, who was our hero earlier, the cousin of Lissy, now not so much. And so this just shows like how mad she was about this mindset, and how all of the early Sigma Kappas, except for this one woman, thought this was just horrible. Like, so all of our early Sigma Kappas, we wanted that, like, women to vote, which was not the case in all the other NPC early women, so we really were like progressive, wanting women to be feminists. We weren't just wanting school for funsies. We were really in it for the right reasons and had a lot of really progressive members that cared about women's rights. So Mary Lowe just roasted this member of Sigma Kappa, wants nothing to do with her again. But they also really worry about the future of Sigma Kappa. I think as demographics shift to colleges, our chapters shift. And they were really worried that the type of woman coming to Colby College would change a lot. They were worried that women that weren't interested in education, that was just there kind of for their Mrs. degree, would come in. And they were really worried, like, should we just stop Sigma Kappa? So Mary Lowe was like, in the bitterness of my heart, I say better bury the society than degrade it. So I think it's really interesting that Sigma Kappa kind of almost died twice, before 1890. And in this time, they were just so mad at Colby College for kind of betraying them. They felt that it betrayed the legacy that they left. They felt that they had outperformed their male counterparts all throughout their education and are just not being like rewarded or accommodated for this at all. So really fiery letters between them. And this really causes beta and gamma. So they decide, okay, we're going to let all the women join Sigma Kappa, even though there's a lot of women coming in, because that change for coeducation brought in some women that probably wouldn't have joined Colby College otherwise. So the Constitution was set at 25. We had more women coming in. They decided, okay, well, a beta chapter. Beta and alpha filled up. We had a gamma chapter. Gamma only had one initiation. Beta only had maybe 2 or 3. And then they were like, this was kind of a ridiculous experiment. Didn't really work. They didn't have a good flow. They kind of all hung out together. And so I just wanted to shout out JPP, the Muse founder. She was initiated this year. Florence Dunn of this year initiate was the first ever Sigma Kappa national president. So a really big year of people that are really going to do a lot for Sigma Kappa nationally. So they say random placement was random into what chapter you get into. And I'm like, was it random? I haven't found any proof otherwise, but I just kind of wonder of whether or not there were kind of a hierarchy of where they placed their members. Maybe I'm just always a little bit skeptical anytime I read sorority research. And I kind of wonder like what the difference was. Maybe it was kind of like big littles, like they're all in the same chapter, but there's families, maybe something like that. It wasn't 3 distinct chapters operating. They were all together, but there were different chapters. They just really didn't know what to do. So eventually they realized like this is not working, and a sorority back in the day was not going to have 60 or 80 members. It's not like today where Kansas just had 90 or something new members. So so we're not gonna get there. So they didn't know what to deal with the numbers. So they decided we are going to cut it down. So they did it in the worst way possible. They had no communication with people. They did not set precedent. They did a very bad job. These are clips from the Colby College newspaper. So everyone was really curious who's going to get bids. And then on the right, have you received an invitation to Sigma Kappa? No, I have not. And people are all kind of mad about it. The weird lingo people use in the 1890s is fascinating. An asterisk, I want to thank Amanda Brown for helping me so much in all of my deep dives. One deep dive is, there was a comment that we were an inclusive sorority until 1893, except one member in 1890 they didn't want. Me and Amanda looked through the Colby College catalogs, all the yearbooks, and tried to figure out if we really didn't admit one member in 1890. We could not find her, but that's the kind of work that me and Amanda do together to try to undig every corner of history we can. So 1893, so dramatic. There were 33 freshman women. We decided to bid 6 of them. We did not tell any of them beforehand that they wouldn't all get in. Basically from 1874 on, every year, like if you're on the recruitment team, all in pool, all in pool, all in pool, all in pool. All of a sudden 1893, admitting 6 out of 33 without telling them. So they were just all expecting their bids to come in the mail like every other year before. And that didn't happen. There were lots of legacies going through. There were lots of people with deep ties to Waterville and the faculty. And so basically, everyone was mad at us. And even of those 6, they weren't sure if they wanted to join Sigma Kappa because they didn't want to be part of an organization that treated other women so poorly. So I thought it was really fascinating of the blowback, and it said it lasted for years. Like the early alphas and all of their writings really referenced this piece as a really dark time and kind of just there's a way to go about things, and we just really didn't go about things really well. So this is a really big key, and this was around the timing we started hazing. So I think it's really interesting that the timing of, when we aren't equal to men and when we are being exclusive aligns with when we started doing a mock initiation and making new members go through things and kind of earn their spots. So I think there's definitely like a master's thesis like in there somewhere you could dig in, but super interesting. So Everyone should have seen this coming. A bunch of women didn't get into Sigma Kappa, so they started their own sorority. And we were like, oh, okay, people are going to compete against us and they're all mad at us. And they have great members, like the freshman class president, we didn't pick as one of our 6. So they had amazing leaders and they were strong right from the start. And we really not regretted the decision, but it really made us feel like we need to do something because we're really, really worried about that. They started as a beta club. They'd later be beta phi, and spoiler, they would later be chi omega. So this is Colby College in 1895. This is the campus right on the water. The campus did move. So the campus, if you're all visiting next year at convention, is actually not in the exact same space as by the water. So definitely go by the water when we're there. 1897. So we tried again and again and again to extend. We desperately were like, we have to be a national sorority. Otherwise, the beta club, they're trying to be a national sorority. We want respect from the fraternities on campus. We need to be a national organization. So we tried really hard at a couple of campuses and we tried really hard at Syracuse. And we were so frustrated that we didn't handle Syracuse right, that it didn't turn out that we had a pretend burial where we made a little casket and put all the correspondence from Syracuse in it and had like a mock like burial where people were like pretend crying and wearing like black outfits and just going crazy. Because what else are you going to do in 1897 to entertain yourself? And they were very dramatic. So I think like we were very confident and bold, but we were a little dramatic and not really sure of ourselves a little bit. I read that actually like they were going to say yes and we backed out because we were afraid that they were going to say no and we didn't want to embarrass ourselves. So a good lesson of like go for it and don't be worried that people might say no. So we were devastated and we were just convinced like there's no way it's done for us. And so in 1900, this is where all the other national organizations at the time were. So we were just like, the time for extension has passed, surely. So I think it's a good reminder today that we don't know what 100 years is going to look like in college or for sorority. So, we don't give up or don't think something's not attainable because what we don't have now, because we have no idea what things are going to look like in 50, 60 years. So we were just like, convinced that we were not going to. And the women at Colby College were just terrified that they wouldn't be the top tier chapter anymore, which is not my favorite motivation for wanting to be a national sorority, but it definitely impacted their decisions. So we were approached by Tri-Del and Chi Omega to be a member of the organizations. Tri-Del approached us multiple times. So I think that's a fact, but really the chapters thought it's either affiliate or die. They thought Sigma Kappa would die if we did not affiliate. So there was an infamous letter that they sent out to alums saying, hey, we need to be a part of a national organization. Sigma Kappa had a great run. Let's be the Sigma Kappa chapter of Tri-Del or Chi Omega or a better national organization, because they had turned those ones down so many times. So it was really a notorious, infamous letter, and it was written by a lot of prominent Sigma Kappas, like the first national president, Mu's founder, the woman that helped install the Zeta chapter, the first editor of the Triangle. So, it wasn't people that didn't care about Sigma Kappa, but it was, more recent alums that were just so concerned that the Beta Club, Beta Phi, would get a national organization and then overtake them as the top chapter. What I found so interesting is Louise Coburn replied to them and said, if you want to not be Sigma Kappa and we want to join a national organization, that's okay with me. And I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. But I really love how she wrote it. I thought it was very diplomatic and put a lot of empowerment in the collegians of like, you know best, I'm not there anymore. However, don't put my name in it. Let's talk it out. Let's consider the pros and cons, but I'm very open to it. And she wanted Sigma Kappa, the legacy to live on through its people, not necessarily the name or the symbol. So when I discovered this letter, I was very surprised. But who knows what she really thought? I think she was being political and trying to make the collegians, think that, it's interesting. And so I wanted to also give a shout out to 2 early chapters. So during this time, it's not that we didn't have Sigma Kappa operating, they just weren't Sigma Kappa yet. So do we have any Delta chapters on, like our Delta Iota, Delta Alpha, all of those volunteers? So the Delta Alpha chapter was actually Pi Kappa Sigma. It was a national organization that merged with Sigma Kappa in 1959. So in 1894, they were actually founded at the Eastern Michigan. So before we even had Delta, Delta Alpha was going strong, and they've been continual ever since. So the Delta Alpha chapter has such a special part in Sigma Kappa's history that I think is really cool. And similarly, our chapter at Chico was originally a local called Pi Phi Beta that was founded in 1898, absorbed by Pi Kappa Sigma, and then became Sigma Kappa. And that's been continuous ever since. So I just love that those both our longest continuous chapter, Eta is our longest continuous Sigma Kappa chapter, but those two chapters have been going strong ever since, haven't closed or shut down. And I just love chapters that have the same link from the founder to the current members and kind of thinking about how we got to where we were. So a couple of slides left, basically finally Delta. So finally, we tried to extend. It finally happened when LDF Foss was initiated into Alpha in 1900, and she transferred to Boston University. And a group of women were really wanting to join a national organization, and she convinced them that Sigma Kappa could be a national organization. And we, as a national organization, were relieved. For the younger alums and the current collegians, they were thrilled that they weren't going to lose their standing to what would soon be Chi Omega. I think they became Chi Omega in 1906. But for older alums, I think they had lost a little bit of their faith in Colby College. And I think they knew that Sigma Kappa couldn't be the ideal that they thought back in the day. And then I think kind of looking at Colby College kicked us off in the 80s, they made the right choice, and we really came full circle. So again, here are resources and further reading. I do want to highlight I was part of the organizational discrimination task force. That's why I got really interested in Sigma Kappa as well, of history. And so definitely read that article and kind of hear all the pieces I talked about. The Almanac of Fraternities and Sororities is done by Fran, who's Pi Phi's historian, in collaboration with a university, and has really great information about all of our founding dates of all of our chapters. So thank you very much, and please get in touch with me. I love going on deep dives. Feel free to message me and be like, hey, did you see this crazy unhinged thing from 1890? And I would love to chat with you about it. Or if you want to know about your chapter of initiation or any other chapter, I'm happy to help you do some research. So thanks for listening.